Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Now this one isn't going to be that fun because this card is very dead, at least for now. So people who know hardware will immediately recognize that this is a GTX 590. This is a dual GPU card, my first dual GPU card, and this is essentially just two GTX 580s on one PCB, very heavily underclocked and very heavily undervolted because, well, cramming two 580s on one PCB is probably not that great of an idea, and the VRM on this thing is also pretty weak. But dual GPU cards are always an interesting thing, and I wanted to have one. Sadly, this thing was very much abused, and I might even say destroyed by the previous owner. So I'm still gonna try to maybe repair it, but like I see maybe a 10% chance that it comes back. This card is in very bad shape. And yeah, so I got the card on eBay, listed as a GTX 560 actually. I think it was set for working? I don't know. I mean, I'm not that mad. Like, I'm just gonna... if the card doesn't work, I'm just gonna hang it on my wall. And for the price that I paid, I guess that's okay. So, I got the card fully assembled, and there's these backplates here, which are for the memory. And when I took them apart, the first thing I noticed is that these thermal pads are partly missing. Like, these just came like that. There's no more thermal pad. There's just parts of the thermal pads missing, and I was like, oh. Someone took this apart and then sold it as a 560 on eBay, even though it's a 590, so they obviously don't know what they're doing. So I became a bit worried. Then I took the cooler off, and I haven't thrown away any thermal pads. This cooler came like that. There wasn't a single thermal pad on this side of the cooler. There was this brown sticky-ish thermal paste on the cores, which barely made any contact, and then more of that stuff for the memory. And as you can see, it did make contact. It's just a blob of more greasy stuff for the memory, which is also why some of these modules look so brownish, because I actually tried to wash it off and it didn't work. It's just so sticky and greasy and disgusting. You can't get this stuff off. Yeah, and the power stages, or I guess the RMOSs in this case, no thermal pads. No thermal pads for the PLX chip in the middle right here. Yeah, so this card just overheated a lot. And it's giving no picture. So it turns on, that doesn't trip any security thing, but like, yeah, it gives no picture. And I've tried powering it on without the heatsink to test what gets hot. The PLX chip, if you look at it a bit closely, you see that the stuff around it is also looking like brownish, almost as if it was like burned by heat over a long time. Yeah, so this PLX chip is probably dead, because this was getting incredibly hot. Like, I turned the card on, literal seconds after turning it on, you couldn't touch this anymore. That's how hot it got. The GPUs at this point, which are actually the heat generating component for this card, barely got any heat in them, but this thing immediately got so hot you couldn't touch it anymore. So, yeah. I guess this PLX chip is toast. Which means that I don't actually know what that means. Like, maybe this means we just have one GPU working. Maybe this means that both GPUs are no longer working. Like, the PLX chip splits your 16x PCI Express slot into two 8x for each core. And I don't know if without the PLX chip, the main core, which is this one, I think, just works on 8x, or if like both cores no longer have a PCI Express connection because the PLX chip handles both. I don't actually know how it works, but yeah. Like, I think at this point, like, as I've said, I think at this point the card is just wall ornament. Still looks kind of nice. I could maybe delete the cores to make it look a bit nicer. So yeah. Kind of a bummer. I didn't pay that much for it, but like, this card is... I just feel kind of bad for the card, because the previous owner clearly didn't care for it, clearly didn't know what they were doing, and clearly destroyed the card in the process by removing all the thermal pads and having at least this thing overheat so much it died. Which, yeah, that's... well... yeah, that's not good. I mean, if it was just a VRM overheating, you could maybe say, okay, I'm just gonna put this away and one day I'm just going to E-power both of the cores. That is possible. But if the PLX chip is dead, you can basically do nothing but swap the PLX chip out, and at that point you might as well just buy another 590. So, yeah. Well, I guess let's just talk a bit about the card. I like the PCB, and then, yeah. So, dual GPU cards are always very, very cramped, and usually have rather, like, have a lot of compromises made for their VRMs. That's no exception here. So, one thing you can see of just how cramped this is the mounting holes of the GPUs. That's not square. Those are just wherever they had space. On this GPU as well. Like, there's no way you fit anything but the stock cooler on this, or like a specifically made full cover water block, which good luck finding that. Then also the memory modules. You have, like, here you have 6 on the front. Here you have also 6, but then there's 3 on this side, 1 on this side because of the 8 pins. You have more on the back. Another funny thing is, behind the cores you have these 470 microfarad pause caps, but then on the second core you just have a random 330 microfarad capacitor, which also, okay. Then, well, is there anything more interesting on the back? Like, you have a couple PWM controllers, like for the memory, one of the memory VRMs, and then because every core on here has its own core and memory VRM, and then the PLX chip has its, like, this little thing is probably the PLX chip VRM, then every core has a 5-phase VRM, and then the memory has also a 2-phase, which is just done with dual NFETs to again save space. The memory on this card is Samsung 1GB eDi, by the way, so this would have been a nice overclocker if it worked. The PWM controllers for the core rail, like, the controllers are the same as on the 580 reference, so you have a CLJ A266 for the core of each, and then some APW thing for the memory, 7088 I think. So yeah. This is also like the 590 is the only Fermi card that actually has working power monitoring on it. So you can see there's a shunt here, and a shunt over here, and is there a third one for the PCI Express slot? Yeah, there's one here. So the 590, like, you have 2 8-pins, but you have 2 580, like fully fledged 580 cores on this. So you have 1 8-pin per core, which that's not a lot. So this thing is extremely power limited. Also the VRM, like, this is a 5-phase, that's already 1 phase less than on the reference 580 PCB. And this is using the RMOSes, which are, can you see it? Yeah, TDA 21211. If I remember correctly, these are 35 amp DRMOSes, so that's pretty weak. So the card is running at 0.7 volts, I think. Like V-Core. And I think all the time. That's like idle voltage for a 2080 Ti. This is running load on that, and this is a Fermi card. So this thing is so significantly undervolted, and it can't actually do much more because the VRM will just blow up if you overvolt it. At launch day, several publishers, like review sites, got their 590 samples, and on launch day the voltage wasn't locked down, so they set the cards to 1.2 volts and just blew them up. So yeah, that's how fast you can blow up this card. But yeah, that's what it takes to fit like what's essentially two GTX 580s on the size of one GTX 580 PCB. If we look at the yeah, well, this is slightly longer. This is just ever so slightly longer than a this is a normal 580 reference PCB. And yeah, so that's like a 1 centimeter longer PCB, but like twice this. And then also the PLX chip, because, well, the normal 580 doesn't need one. So, yeah. I'll put that away. So dual GPU cards are interesting. They're not always very interesting. Like, well, they are interesting for overclocking, but they are usually a pain to deal with, mostly because the VRMs are just very cramped and therefore weak, and also you can't always, like on this card, you can for sure not get a custom cooling solution. But on some cards, they do actually have normal mounting spacing, and you could just like fit 2 blocks on it, but then you have to cool the VRM somehow. On this card, well, you're kind of stuck with the stock heatsink. And then, yeah, one fan, which actually moves a decent amount of air out the sides. Like, this fan is actually not that bad. But yeah. Well, if you're seeing the 590 again, then I guess I fixed it. I don't think I will fix it. I think I'm just gonna maybe try to clean it again. Maybe delete the cores. And then it's just gonna end up on my wall to be nice to look at. Because like dual GPU cards, they do look kinda nice. Like even a lot of people with basic hardware knowledge will see, oh, this thing has 2 of the big ones. This is gonna be special. Because like it is. Dual GPU cards are no longer a thing, really. Like, the last dual GPU card that Nvidia made for the consumer market was the Titan Z, which was essentially 2 780 Ti's on one PCB. And then the last dual GPU card that AMD made was, I think, like for consumers, was the 295, which was two 290Xs on one PCB. AMD did make a Radeon Pro, like with like 2 Polaris cores, but that was like a workstation card, not a consumer one. So I don't count that one, but that also existed. And then there's the Vega, the dual GPU Vega one for the iMac. So, yeah. But the dual GPU cards are really no longer a thing. Usually because people just kinda, well, if you really want SLI, why don't you just buy 2 cards and then have less of a pain to work with, because then you have 2 proper cards and not 1.5 cards, what this essentially is, with how many weak spots it has. Yeah, and then also dual GPUs in general is kinda dead. Like, Nvidia has been scaling down SLI support, and so has AMD with Crossfire. Like, dual GPU configurations are no longer really being supported with like modern hardware. So yeah, that's also another reason why dual GPU cards are really no longer a thing. But yeah, it's still nice to get these older dual GPU cards. They're nice to look at. They're somewhat rare. Yeah, so that's mostly why I'm not that mad that it's broken, because like well, for a dead card I kinda paid a lot, but like I didn't pay that much. It was like $20. So yeah. So if I don't get a working 590, at least I get a nice wall ornament, I guess. So, yeah, that would be everything, I would think. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.